Hello, everyone. Welcome to the breakdown. It's been a hot minute since our last episode, about 11 months ago. Called away on matters of great import, we had to put the show on hold for a time, but now we're back. I'm James Sayer, your host. I'm a policy analyst, writer, and instructional design and project management consultant who specializes in delving into a wide range of topics and analyzing and discussing matters that generally don't get the attention they deserve. So tonight we have a very special guest, and I will let him introduce himself. Sir, who are you?
My name's Jordan Pearce. I am a bartender slash musician slash just done a lot of stuff. I'm a regular blue collar guy, and I'm here to talk about some fun topics with you, James, as you're well aware.
Yes.
Yeah, just have some good conversation. Let's see where it goes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jordan. Thanks for joining us. Now to our topic for tonight, Edward Snowden. In May of 2013, a 29-year-old Edward Snowden, an NSA contractor working as a computer systems administrator and former CIA employee, released a trove of documents revealing the secret NSA PRISM program, which allowed for the monitoring of phone metadata of potentially almost all Americans' phone calls as part of their attempt to track terrorist communications. Snowden released these documents to journalists who were from the Washington Post and the Guardian, and then he fled to Hong Kong, then later to Russia, where he remains today as a full-fledged Russian citizen who has formally pledged allegiance to Russia. Now, the total number of documents Snowden stole/leaked is estimated to be over 1.7 million documents, and is considered to be the biggest theft of top-secret U.S. intelligence in American history. According to the U.S. government, most of these documents released had nothing to do with the actual PRISM program, but revealed important aspects of other U.S. intelligence and military activities, which many in the intelligence community say have harmed U.S. national security. Now, the NSA had previously denied existence of any such spying or collecting of phone metadata from U.S. citizens through a program like PRISM, which the courts later ruled was illegal. So the USA Patriot Act was later amended to enact certain protections to help ensure no illegal spying or collection of phone metadata on U.S. citizens would occur again. Now, we can definitely thank Edward Snowden for bringing this illegal NSA program to light. But what about all those other documents that had nothing to do with PRISM? Why release them? Why provide additional material on other government intelligence programs not related to PRISM that might help our enemies? Now, there are many who consider Edward Snowden to be a hero, who bravely blew the whistle on an illegal NSA program and should be pardoned for his deeds. However, there are also many who consider him a traitor for violating his oath to keep our secrets, for which he was well paid, and also for providing a vast number of those secrets to our enemies. Now, that is our primary question tonight. Should Snowden be pardoned for his actions because they served the greater good by revealing the illegal PRISM program? Or should he be brought back to America to stand trial for espionage against the United States because of all the U.S. secrets he illegally revealed? So, with that, what do you think, Jordan? What are your thoughts?
From really high up, that's a great question. As we get further into the details of it, I mean, it's a lot. Most of what is on just blurbs about it on the news and whatnot is a lot of he said, she said, he said, they said, rather, given it's the government versus him.
Right.
But I really don't know. After reading what I've read about it, I still feel like I know so little about it because the stories are so very different.
Yeah. Like he says that he tried. He claims he notified numerous NSA officials about what he believed were to be illegal intelligence collection, but the government claims that he did not follow any reporting protocols. That he met with someone. He met with one person once, but it was not to address
not to quote unquote blow the whistle.
Right.
Right. And so yeah, so I mean, do we want to be conspiratorial and say, well, yeah, but of course the government's going to say that.
Right. It's a legit suspicion, right? Because if they were already lying, right? They were the program, they were denying something that was going on, so they weren't being honest about it. So yeah, you got to wonder, are they telling the truth now?
Right, but at the same time, I mean, the way he acted, because I mean, he's made quite a bit of money off of this, and I mean, a lot of whistleblowers that knew that they were in the right, I feel like would stick to their guns and stay, and say, here it all is. Then come and get me. Let's see who's wrong here. Now, I mean, like. There's also, going back to the tinfoil hat community. I mean, there's also, but of course, that's when the guard falls asleep and the camera stops working in his cell.
Right.
And then he quote unquote kills himself. But I mean, like, how paranoid do we want to be versus how paranoid do we need to be, versus with stories so wildly varying from each other, who do we assume is telling the truth, versus the government that's already very, very rich and powerful versus the guy that is now rich and debatably not necessarily powerful, but certainly influential.
Yeah, he's definitely got influence, and he definitely has a lot of supporters. I mean, he did a public service by revealing this illegal program, but it also appears that he revealed a lot of other stuff that was completely unrelated to it. According to the government, the overwhelming majority of the files he stole were not related to the illegal data collection program at all. And there was a story reported in by the Sunday Times from London that the MI6 had to move some of their spies out of various locations because Chinese and Russian intelligence had both decoded encryption of material they had received from Edward Snowden. That's the claim that this story from the Sunday Times, they were citing some, unknown high-ranking UK intelligence official, right, saying that they had to move people. The United States government is, how much of that's true, right? You don't know, because that's a claim. Maybe sometimes the government's not always honest about, everything, as we already know, but it seems like if 1.7 million documents were stolen, and that's a lot.
That's the highest estimate, because I've read varying accounts between.
Yeah. It depends on who. Yeah, different sources depending on when the information was published. I've seen like 1.7 is 1.77. I've seen 1.5, but so Snowden's story, as I understand from everything I read, is more or less that what he stole was encrypted, right? Encrypted so well that no one could break it, neither the Russians or the Chinese ever. That was his claim. Now, that's hard for me to believe that, right? I tend to believe anything can be cracked. Right? There's some way they'll find a way eventually to crack something. That it's not impossible. But he also says that he not only was it encrypted, but that everything he gave, I think approximately 58,000 files to the journalists for them to go through, review, and publish. He trusted them, right, to publish what they felt was appropriate. And he gave them the material, but then he claims he destroyed everything else that he didn't give them. But we're kind of have to take his word at that. It's like, okay, he says he destroyed it, so I guess it's okay.
Well, right.
Sure. Okay, he destroyed it. Everything's fine.
Okay, well, never mind then.
That's a lot. that's a lot of if he right he hands over tens of thousands of documents that the Post and the Guardian go through and then publish, right? That already have information that's not that includes information that's not just about the illegal PRISM program, but other stuff as well that is potentially damaging to national security, at least to a lot of government officials, according to what they say. Then what's the justification for doing that? Why release all that other information? Or if you're not going to release it, right? If you're going to destroy it, why take it at all? That's my question: is if you weren't going to divulge anything that you felt was harmful, that wasn't related, if you're only going to like distribute 60,000 or so documents, why take 1.7 million? And then we just have to take his word for it that they're destroyed. And because that's his claim. He always says that he never cooperated with the Russians, that they asked for information, he wouldn't give it, and he wasn't going to play that game, and that they were just fine with that. That it was not what they wanted, but they left him alone.
Oh yeah, that's what Russia's known for doing, is leaving people alone.
So that's a little difficult to believe. There's a lot of unknowns, right? We don't know how much is Snowden telling the truth, how much of what the government is saying, because there was a report released in 2016, that cited a bunch of different things that they found, that were troubling, that he caused tremendous damage to national security, and that the vast majority of the documents he stole had nothing to do with the programs impacting, privacy interests, and they pertain to like military, defense, and intelligence programs of, great interest to our adversaries. And so that was one of the things. It said he's not a whistleblower. It said under the law, publicly revealing classified information does not qualify someone as a whistleblower. However, disclosing classified information that shows fraud, waste, abuse, or other illegal activity to the appropriate law enforcement or oversight personnel, including to Congress, does make someone a whistleblower and affords them, with protections. And so they say, since he didn't go through that process, right, that he didn't attempt to contact anyone regarding this.
According to one side. I
mean,
he says he did. He says he didn't, or they say he didn't.
Right. But so this is according to Congress, right? Not just the NSA. So, and this was signed by all 22 members of the committee, both Democrat and Republican. So it had
a rare occasion that they all agreed on one thing.
Yeah, so I think this, it claimed also that, that he was like a disgruntled employee, that 2 weeks before he began mass downloads of classified documents, he was reprimanded after engaging in a workplace spat with NSA managers. He was repeatedly counseled by his managers regarding his behavior at work. It said in June of 2012, Snowden became involved in a fiery email argument with a supervisor about how computer updates should be managed. Snowden added an NSA senior executive several levels above the supervisor to the email thread, an action that earned him a swift reprimand from his contracting officer for failing to follow the proper protocols for raising grievances. So, kind of potentially painting a picture here of possibly someone who's, a disgruntled employee, which we know from, past occurrences. Robert Hansen, who, works for the FBI and was a, spy for Russia the whole time. a secret agent for Russia. Yeah, he had been passed over. His whole reason for betraying the United States was he was bitter because of being passed over. And that's happened before. It's either usually money related, or often someone's desperate for money, right? They're in debt, or they're bitter about being passed up or ignored or something. And this is kind of a way of getting even. So there is that potential as well. I mean, in most of the interviews I've read, he sounds reasonable to me, and he argues a good case, right? He's well spoken and he makes very good points. He does not at all come across as like, somebody, who's a lunatic. But again, I don't think any of these things should be decided in the court of public opinion. They should be decided in a court of law, where the facts can be aired, right? Where he can provide a defense. He'd have plenty of money for a defense, and the government
which we should touch on.
All right, so here's the thing, and the reason he says he won't come back is because, and this is a good point, for why he has chosen not to return. If he is indeed free to leave at this point, he may not even be free to leave Russia. Really, I mean, he's free if Putin wants him to go. If Putin says it's okay, he can go. But the espionage law, the Espionage Act, which is from created in the World War I era, basically the way it's worded, it does not allow for a public interest defense, right? So he would not effectively be able to argue that what he did was in the public interest. The verdict would hinge on of that trial would hinge on, did you or did you not disclose this information, which at this point is basically open and shut, right? Yes, he did. He's admitted it. He spent the last 10 years talking about how and why he did it, and all the things that people need to do to protect their privacy. So why would he return if he's not going to be able to, make that defense? Right? It'd be pointless for him to. He wouldn't be able to argue a defense at all, because
right. But
he's guilty of disclosing that information. He's already admitted it publicly. There's no question of innocence. I mean, it is against the law for him to disclose that information that he did. So he broke a law, but his argument is he broke a law to, reveal a much greater wrong.
He committed a crime to, in his words, or not his words, but like to basically what he's saying is that he committed this crime to expose a much larger crime.
Right, and that
which feels noble at face value.
Right. Right, and we have, a healthy distrust of government for good reason, because they're made of people that make bad choices, like everywhere else in the world. People make mistakes and try and cover them up. Government's no different. You got to keep them. You got to have oversight, right? You can't just trust that they're going to do the right thing all the time, because they don't.
Which has been made abundantly clear over and over again.
Yeah. But I think he argues that, as a contractor, he didn't even have whistleblower protections really at all. And the government says that's not true, that there were protocols in place for him to follow, and he didn't even try and follow them. So yeah, there's definitely a he said, she said about that. As far as what the truth is, I think the most troubling thing to me is the amount of documents.
Well, yeah, and I mean
related to the program.
Why not related? And what the name of the reporter, like one of the reporters that he initially met with, like in Hong Kong, Glenn Greenwald.
Yep, Greenwald and Laura Poitras. Yeah,
Right. His one of his explanations for the way he did what he did was that, you know, he had to, in order to make the unbelievable things true, he had to take believable, like, you know, nuts and bolts, this is how the NSA operates kind of stuff with him as well, to kind of be like, this is what I say it is, and you can say, oh, anybody could have faked that, but like, okay, here's a bunch of other stuff. But at the same time, I mean, like, 1.5 million, I mean, like, cut that in half and call it, 750,000 documents is a lot of goddamn documents.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It really is. And I mean, when, tens of thousands of those not only like aren't related to the surveillance of, US citizens, but it has to do with, intelligence operations by the UK and Australia and our other allied countries and everything, that's, did he really have to go that far? I mean, like if what he was doing was in the interest of, like, privacy rights and what the US is doing to the United States people, okay, I get that, but everything else in there that he released along with it was like, oh, and also here's your bonus. Like, but what was the point in all of that? If that information wasn't even like revealing any crimes that were being committed, it was just intelligence operations going on around the world between the US and its allies, then what was the point in, in real ways potentially endangering those lives, of, people that we have and our allies have overseas and like doing intelligence operations, and whether it's just like the methodology of how they collect intelligence or what people are up to and where. So if it's not strictly about the privacy violations of the United States citizens that he's, pounding on the table about, why all this other stuff too?
Yeah. Well, okay. So yeah, I mean, it seemed like to me, like, yeah, he should come back. He needs to come back. He's not going to come back because, he's not going to be able to make a public interest defense. It's just going to be, did you or did you not disclose this stuff? And he did. And
then by the letter of the law of that 1917 Espionage Act or Espionage Prevention Act, whichever, I forget the exact name of it. To the letter of that law, then he is in fact very guilty and would face the consequences for that. And there isn't really much anybody could do about it, appeal or not, regardless of opinion in either direction.
Yeah.
So
I think the judge could take certain matters into consideration for sentencing, and certainly the president has the pardon power. But I mean, very few. It doesn't see. No American president is okay with what he did. You
don't get high up in the government and think let him talk.
Well, yeah, the NSA works for the president, right? They report directly to him. So, they report, I guess, the DNI, who reports to the Director of National Intelligence, who reports to the president. They serve the president. That's their job, in providing intelligence. He's their primary customer. And, Snowden, in fact, took the oath that he took, right? He signed his non-disclosure agreement with the NSA and with the CIA before that, when he worked for them. You sign this agreement saying you're not going to disclose, classified or top secret information. So yeah, you're violating that agreement, which is a civil agreement. So right. Yeah, there are consequences for that. But the oath he took was to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against its enemies, both foreign
and domestic. Yeah, okay. No, and there is that, But I mean, like, given that there are a lot of like legal roads to go about, like beyond, I mean, like whoever at work he says he told and they ignored him. I mean, like, it feels like there might have been something else he could have done before he met in Hong Kong with, reporters that weren't based in the U.S. To deal with what he says is a very U.S. problem.
Yeah. Well, and now, if he's not going to be able to make a public interest defense, he's not coming back, even if Putin would let him leave. And it's kind of a public relations coup for Putin to have him there, staying there, giving speeches, living, seemingly free. I think it's probably in Putin's best interest to, leave Snowden alone, right? And I mean, because Snowden has criticized the Russian government. He has spoken out. He has criticized their actions, like in invading Ukraine and other things like that. He has spoken out about it. But I think Putin's he's a smart guy. I think he knows that serves his interest to let Snowden do that, because certainly citizens of Russia are not free to do so there.
Right. But I mean, like, if nothing else, I mean, Putin knows that, like, just knowing that Snowden is free and, like, seemingly, like, rich and powerful and, happily living out his life in Russia is going to at least piss off the president.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, I mean, so the story was that he flew to Hong Kong first, right? And he wanted to go to Ecuador, but then Julian Assange, through WikiLeaks, counseled Snowden not to go to Ecuador, that he would be safer going to Russia, essentially. And according to the government, that Snowden would have not even been able to get on the plane to go to Russia without assistance from the Russian government. Now, whether he's aware of that assistance or not, I don't know. That might have been provided through Assange or the reporters or some other middleman without Snowden knowing. But that, because Snowden spent like a month, I think a month, like 40 days or something, in the Moscow airport once he got there, right? And that's something that Snowden has said. It's like, if I was like the spy for Russia, would they keep me in the Russian airport for 40 days? He said they would welcome me, right, as a hero type of thing. But it's like, well, I don't know. Would they, or would they want to do this as a cover and make it look like, it's a big thing that you ran to Russia. Oh, what a surprise. We don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. When it's like, oh,
wasn't he on he was on his way to Ecuador when he got stuck in Russia, though, right?
Okay, so what happened was, the U.S. government basically invalidated his passport, so he could not go anywhere except to the United States. He could still travel, but only back to the United States, and he wasn't going to do that. So he basically, because his passport was invalidated, he should not have been able to fly to Russia at all, to get stuck in the Moscow airport. That flight should have never happened. And the only reason it happened was because he had help from the Russian government to get on that plane to get to Russia in the first place.
Well, wasn't it also that the officials in Hong Kong said that parts of his arrest warrant, or like the detainment order or whatever, like it didn't fully comply with Hong Kong law, and so they couldn't really stop him from leaving at that time?
Well, it could be that could be the case. That might be. I'm not sure. I don't know, but
it was. I got this off of Wikipedia.
Yeah. So I don't know. What I do know is that
New York Times article.
He took either way. He took 1.7, 1.7 million in that neighborhood files, and he's told us that they were destroyed. That everything that he didn't give to the journalists, that everything else was destroyed, and we're supposed to believe that.
Right.
So it's almost like, well, okay, he's not going to come back because All right, he come back if they amended the law, right? If they amended the Espionage Act to allow for a public interest defense, would he then come back? He said he would. I it's not going to happen. They're not going to. I'd like to see them change that, make that change, or even potentially repeal the Espionage Act altogether and create a new law. That encourage that better protects whistleblowers, right, and better defines what is legal and what is not legal whistleblowing. Mm-hmm. And does allow for some type of public interest defense. I think the fear probably is in government in allowing a public interest defense is then that potentially might encourage more people to leak, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, wow, how many people who've thought about leaking? It's like, but they don't, because it's like, well, if I'm charged with something under the Espionage Act, I can't make a public interest defense. It's just going to be, did you or did you not steal this stuff? And if they determine that I did, it's over.
Which he already admitted to.
Right. So it's over.
So it's over. Yeah. Like on paper, I mean, as soon as he is like on U.S. soil, like as soon as he's in custody, like he knows what happens for the next, rest of his life.
I mean, even Bernie Sanders has said he should return to stand trial, but be able to, but to have, the public benefit of what he did taken into consideration. But if you're not able to do that through because of the Espionage Act, he's never going to come back, even if Putin would let him leave. So it's almost like it's a pointless exercise, because it's like in asking this question, in a sense, because he's not going to be pardoned. Very unlikely that he's going to be pardoned for releasing all that information the way he did by the president. Very unlikely that the government's going to sign off on that. And then, so he's not going to return to stand trial. So it looks like this is it. It's just going to stay this way, barring, somebody, barring Congress, being willing to make a change to the Espionage Act, right, to allow for that public interest defense. And who knows, maybe Snowden's just blowing smoke. Maybe he wouldn't come back then either. Maybe that's just an excuse, right? It's an easy one to put out there. But it's a good point, is that, that specific law doesn't allow for it. And, in a lot of other, most other cases, when you're at trial, a person can, appeal to extenuating circumstances of the situation to be taken into consideration. But when a law like specifically curtails that, there's no incentive for the person to come back. But I think that's the idea, is why it was created that way. It was to discourage, right, any leaking at all. You're not going to be able to, it won't matter what your reasoning was. If you divulge this stuff, boom. And it has been used. It has been used, but it's like, I think they just need to update that law. It's been around since World War I. And technology has changed a little. I think the environment's a little different now. It's probably, I mean, that's the thing, right? We're looking at a culture of whistleblowing now. Because there's a lot of support, for Snowden and people like Assange in revealing government misdeeds, and also that people like Daniel Ellsberg, who was the one who leaked all the information for the Pentagon Papers, all that information that was published by the Post, during the Vietnam War. He didn't go to jail for that. The government tried to prosecute him, but they threw it out. No one, Ellsberg didn't go to jail, and no one from the Post went to jail for it. And Ellsberg made an attempt, like he tried to meet with Congress about it, and they just refused to meet with him about the information. The government he worked for Rand Corporation, and he, worked on the Pentagon Papers as far as it was a study basically of what was going on in Vietnam. And it was basically the analysis from Rand was the war is going very poorly and very much in opposite of what like the government was saying at the time. And so he released all this information, but he went through all of it, like every single document. He went through it before and made the necessary redactions himself, what should be kept in and what shouldn't.
Well, and that was what, the early 70s. I mean, how many documents are we talking about in this case too? I mean, I'm certain it wasn't 1.7 million. I'd be surprised if it was 1,700.
It was a lot, but it wasn't 1.7 million.
Okay.
Which, there's no way.
Yeah, I mean,
all of those, not even a fraction of them.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean the sheer just amount of data, like, no, I mean, if it was 1.7 million, single sentence long, briefings, I mean, like that's still 1.7 million sentences. I mean, like how many 500-page novels would that fill up? That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, Ellsberg has said, okay, because I mean, he didn't run, right? He stuck around and faced the music. He went to trial, and part of the reason they threw the government's charges out is because the government under Nixon had done a number of things. One of them to spy on Ellsberg was to break into his psychiatrist's office to steal files and information on whatever they could find out about Ellsberg and his therapy sessions, so they could use that to make him look bad in the public eye. So that was part of the reason that the judge ended up throwing out the case to begin with. But Ellsberg has said he thinks, and others have said this too, that this is heard this a lot, that there are a lot of things that the government classifies. The government's just guilty of overclassification. There are a lot of things that are listed as classified or secret or top secret that shouldn't be. That a lot of things should be made open to the public, but they're kept secret for political reasons, right? Because government just doesn't want to deal with it, having to, this information to be public. That's one more thing you have to manage. It's easier to keep it secret if you don't tell people. People know about it, right? Some things are not necessarily. They might make your life more difficult as a president or as director or deputy director of this agency. Not necessarily harming national security. It's just it would be easier if they didn't know all this stuff. Right. And like PRISM was illegal because of how they collected the data.
Okay.
It wasn't that data collection on, phone metadata collection itself wasn't illegal. It was the way they did it, right? The way they were doing it was they were basically gathering up most Americans' phone metadata immediately, just snatching it up, versus what they were supposed to be doing was, having a specific investigation and saying, we need metadata on these numbers, and going to, whoever it is, whichever phone company or whichever, internet company, Google, whichever company they were going to, versus just tapping in and doing it themselves, right? So they weren't going about it the right way, and They were trying to. They would find, they would find the crime sort of after the fact. Sometimes that was one. There was one instance that happened where they found. I think when they finally the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals found in 2020 that ultimately was the one that found that the NSA program, the PRISM program, was illegal because of the way the data was collected. So it wasn't illegal necessarily to collect the data. It was just they were collecting it all first versus having a specific investigation and a specific, a warrant, right?
Right, and so just collecting the data en masse, and then when somebody's name pops up in an investigation, they just go and open that file, right? Is that what you're saying? Is that, oh, well, we already have his phone records, let's see what he's been up to. Yeah, that's some 1984, like, I mean, I hate to coin an overused term, but I mean, like, that sounds very Orwellian.
Right, so, I mean, and they weren't listening in on every American's phone calls. That's not what was going on, but they were basically collecting like who's calling who, how many times, how often,
right. The metadata. Yeah, it wasn't like, it's not the specific content of, say, a phone call or an email or a text message, but it was, this is when it happened and this is who it was to and from at what time and what day, which is still. You can do a lot with even that much data. I mean, you can still very dependably track people's general actions.
You could derive a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that it exceeded Congress's authorization for the program. So the program would have been legal and fine, and that metadata collection would have been legal, but it was just that they went too far, right? It was easier for them to do that. I mean, and they have a culture, and Snowden has talked about this too, which is a very aggressive culture of wanting all the information, right? They want it all. That is their ethos. I mean, when you think about it, when you think about the mindset of intelligence gathering, is you want as much intelligence as you can gather. Related to what it is you're trying to do, right? And so if they're trying to track terrorist activity, it's easier for them if they just gathered up everybody's calls, right? And then they can filter through them, right? And pick out what they want versus having to have a specific
to get a specific warrant
for someone, and then have to go to Google or Facebook or whoever or Verizon and say, all right, we need everything you've got on this number, all your metadata information. That's a lot more steps for them to have to do that. Much easier to just directly, tap into their stuff and
just
collect
already have
metadata yourself. Yeah, thank you. We're good. We got it. So, I mean, that's the thing, right? The intelligence gathering, data collection, I mean, espionage in general, they're illegal activities to begin with. They're spying on people, right? These activities to begin with are fundamentally dishonest activities. They are criminal. They're, people spying on other people. That's criminal action, right? If you're breaking into somebody's house and planting a bug, that's a criminal activity. Right? If you're stalking someone and following them and looking in their window and spying on what they're doing, right? I mean, you cross a certain line where that becomes criminal activity, where it goes to just like, and definitely, yeah, I mean, that's what intelligence agencies do across the world. And everybody spies on everybody. And I think with the one exception, sometimes allies don't spy on each other, right? But we spy on our allies, and a lot of them spy on us. I mean, we've even admitted that this has been known for decades, that the United States basically spies on everyone, with the exception, the stated exception of, right, we don't spy on Canada, Australia, England, or New Zealand. And with those four plus the United States, those are the Five Eyes. So that's kind of like, that's what they call it, Five Eyes. There's an agreement we don't spy on each other, and we have, open information sharing between intelligence agencies.
Yeah,
or at least more so than other countries. But yeah, a lot of the information about what are other countries like us, the Five Eyes, like Australia and Canada and the UK were doing, that stuff was also revealed. It wasn't just information that pertained to us, but pertained to our allies as well. That was revealed by Snowden's releases. So it seems, like there was damage done to me. The question to what degree, it's hard to say, but with that many documents released, it seemed like there was harm done, but they let him get away, right? So he's not coming back. He's not gonna come back unless they change the law. If they change the law, maybe he'll come back.
But I mean, the likelihood that they'll change that law even seems insignificant to me.
I mean, if you got the right people in Congress and the right president, but the view in government, as I understand it, mostly is prevailingly anti-Snowden. They think what he did, they view him more as a traitor and as a Russian spy than other people who, someone like Rand Paul, I think that is someone, he's one of the exceptions in government who would feel like, yeah, let Snowden go. Because Rand Paul's like a real big anti, pro-privacy, anti-government, big government. And he's gotten on the, I mean, Trump even for a while got on the pardon Snowden thing until he changed his mind.
Well, I mean, didn't he say something along the lines of, if he could provide us with President Obama's birth certificate, I might become a fan.
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, I mean, like that's, classic at the real Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think that he's staying in Russia. He can't go anywhere. He can't leave Russia because, then it's possible we might snatch him up and bring him back. So he's basically, I mean, it's a big country. It's a big, he's got a lot of country, I guess he can roam around.
Yes, technically. Yeah, but I mean, he was granted Russian citizenship at the end of last year. And
a lot of speeches,
he did, so he's presumably has been issued a Russian passport, so I mean technically he could travel on paper, but right. I mean, is he stuck in Russia? I mean, even as a Russian citizen, would he be able to travel to places not necessarily, any of those countries with which maybe he had disclosed those those files of? I mean, Australia and England are probably out of the question, but I mean, would he be able to take a vacation in, say, South Korea as a Russian citizen without fear of being apprehended by United States agents there? Because I mean, at that point, it feels like that's
I think we go out of our way to get him. I think Yeah, and it seems to me so I mean, even if whether or not just removing the question of whether or not Putin had let him leave, I think Putin, given the situation, probably hasn't had to say anything to him about leaving, because why would he? And it's just here's the thing though, how much right? Snowden's story is that he didn't cooperate. That he never gave them any information. He's been able to live in Russia for 10 years without providing the information. That House report that I read from 2016 on Snowden said that he had repeatedly met with Russian intelligence. Snowden says that that he's met with them, but he tells them the same thing, that he's not getting any information. He's not cooperating. That's his story. He's sticking with it. It's kind of hard for me to believe that, but maybe it's true. Maybe they're like, all right, leave him alone. We like him happy here. It looks good for us. Maybe
Right.
the cost benefit they make is it's like, yeah, we wish he'd give us more information, but it's like he's a thumb in the eye to the United States. It makes us look like a good guy because we've got this privacy internet privacy champion living safely in Russia. So that's good advertising. That's good PR for Russia, right? If something bad happened to him, that would blow the whole deal. That would ruin the facade. And it may be that he just, who knows? Like, it's very difficult for me to believe that he hasn't compromised himself for his own personal safety.
Well, right, and I mean, like
being asked just simply to be allowed to go to Russia and stay there.
Right. I mean, like I feel like, I mean, there's obviously there's more to all sides of this story that, none of us will ever know. And there's, a handful of people that'll ever know what's really going on because they're the ones involved in it. But I mean, he wouldn't have been able to just stay in Russia and stay at a high profile and, be able to do the things that he's doing and be granted the citizenship and all that. Like, if he didn't have something that they wanted, or if he wasn't doing something for them, obviously, nobody's granted citizenship in any country without being able to offer something to that country.
I don't know. Maybe it's enough that, making the United States look bad, by Russia does way worse than what we've done. But, it's like at the same time, letting Snowden do his thing, it continues to focus on what the United States, our misdeeds. He's criticized Russia, but he's not really. He doesn't normally when he's interviewed, he's normally talking about the NSA and what they were doing, or he will talk about other stuff. He'll talk about things you do right currently.
Well, sure. I mean, he might not have. I mean, he might technically be telling the truth by saying, "Oh no, I never disclosed anything in any of those documents that I had because I destroyed them all." But that doesn't mean that he hasn't been able to, scratch their back in other ways. I mean, he might still be able to let on to, procedural things. Yeah. Or, just, bullet points of, what to look for, or what to do or not do in certain situations that he had, particular experience with, like in his experience with the CIA and the NSA and the different groups that he worked for, as an analyst and all that. I mean, he has to have had something to offer to them. But I mean, circling back to the big question, good guy or bad guy in Edward Snowden. I still think tough call, because things have changed, as a result of what he had to say and the things that he did. I mean, like the PRISM project died, and what was the other one that they replaced it with that then was then too expensive? Upstream. Yeah. That went away because, while it was operating more within the bounds of the law, it was too complicated and expensive because laws make things complicated and expensive. Imagine that.
It just wasn't effective. Yeah, it wasn't
right.
Worth the trouble.
And so is Snowden a good guy or a bad guy? Well, I mean, good things happened as a result. Sure. Bad things happened as a result. I mean, there are officials in the U.S. government that have said, that there were definitely negative.
Sources and methods were compromised.
Well, right. Yeah. The head of the NSA, saying that, that procedurally, ISIS and other organizations that they'd been tracking, after his documents were leaked, they changed the way they did things to made it harder for them to be tracked by our various intelligence agencies and whatnot. And, you know,
Yeah.
so they're obviously going to point right at Snowden and say, well, it happened after this, so it must have been because they read something that he had in there. We'll never know because they're not going to let us read it. But, you know, is what he did the right thing? Yes. Is what he did the wrong thing? It seems like also yes.
Yeah.
You know, in a perfect world, he would come back and stand trial. And, you know, in the perfect America that a lot of people want to, well, the perfect United States, that a lot of people want to imagine, you know, he would get a fair trial, but would he? And there's been enough doubt cast on the general operations of the government, specifically intelligence agencies and like the higher echelons of that part of the government and the military, to call into question whether or not he would get a fair trial, or, you know, very well whether he would make it to that trial or not in one piece.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does that sound paranoid and conspiratorial? Yes, but
I think it's a fair.
I don't think it sounds unreasonable. While it's not the most reasonable thing on the list, I don't think it's the least by any means.
I mean, it's always all right. So it's always a possibility, right? Maybe it's not likely, like, that the government would do anything.
No, it's not. But what is likely right now is that it's not. But he still wouldn't get. He still wouldn't be able to use the defense that he says he did this for, which is the public interest, because that is excluded from the Espionage Act, which he was charged under. 106-year-old government decree that, you know, maybe really should be updated given, you know, the vast amount of information available to much larger numbers of people. And I mean, like getting 1.7 million documents out of Washington, D.C. in 1917 would have involved in layman's terms, I believe, a whole bunch of carriages.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, that was a popular saying back then.
I can imagine. So, you know, I mean, like if you can walk out with, you know, 500 years worth of reading material on your cell phone from a building, you know, some of it exposing crimes, some of it more of a crime that you have it and are exposing it. That's, you know, which one is outweighed here, you know, in the big picture, you know, and, you know, by being definitely guilty of it because he's admitted to it, is he all the way guilty? Does he deserve to be punished and go to prison and, you know, feel all these ramifications for the bad part of the good thing that he did?
I don't, you know, I think, the bottom line is I think he should be able to make a public interest defense, you know.
Right. Because, but on paper right now, he is guilty and has no defense because his defense, you know, doesn't count, you know, but
if he could make the case, look, yes, I broke the law, but I did it because the NSA was collecting, you know, everybody's metadata, which they shouldn't have been. You needed to know that because it's not clear that any real harm came from it. The potential for harm was massive. Like, you can't let a government have that kind of unlimited power
or
to
just,
use without
just
any
the
oversight.
internet. I mean, you know, once it's out of his hands, who knows where it's freaking going, you know?
Yeah. So, I think that it's an incomplete story. We don't have all the information. We don't know how much of what Snowden is saying is true. He's pretty good about giving good rationale, give good reasons for why he did what he did. Beyond the 1.7, like, I have not heard a good explanation from him on why it was so much, right? And why so much of it was unrelated to the illegal program. Like, that to me just is, you know, indefensible, really. There's no defense for that. But I want to hear it. I want to hear his defense, but we can't, like, the place for that to happen is in the court of law, but it's not going to happen because he's not going to come back because of the Espionage Act. So, Yeah, I think that's, to me, that's the biggest takeaway from all this, is that law needs to change. That there need to be, better protections for whistleblowers and like publishers and journalists, like specified in the new law, in the update of the Espionage Act, and that it allow for a public interest defense. That be included as part of the updated law, because there are times when whistleblowing is justified, and a person should be able to make a defense, a full and fair defense of their actions, and you can't really do that in this kind of a situation. Okay, so that, I'll say that much. The only other thing is that I think what probably the government would say in response to what I just said is that no, we don't need to revise the Espionage Act for Edward Snowden because he had whistleblower protocols to follow, which he chose not to follow. He didn't meet with the supervisors and other people he was supposed to meet with and report this information, right? Because he chose not to do that, right? And report and go through the process that he was supposed to, and instead just, leaked the information to the Post and the Guardian. That was his chance to do it the right way. And he gave up any right. He wants a public interest defense now, but he gave up his right to that,
by going about it the way he did.
By doing it the wrong way.
Yeah, it looks bad. Like what he did definitely looks bad, and then finding himself like, oops, here I am stuck in Russia. My bad. I guess I'm a citizen here now, 10 years later, like, yeah. Doesn't look any better. I mean, like,
right, because it looks like, to me, whistleblowers, that there's a specific process that you have to go through, right, to actually qualify for being a whistleblower. It's like you have to go through these specific steps. If you skip one of them, you stop being a whistleblower, right? And
yeah.
You become a leaker, or you've become, a spy.
Yeah, you've become at least a thief.
A criminal.
Well, depending on, depending on where you stop with the whistleblowing. Going to the press and saying, the NSA is doing all these terrible things and then having nothing to back it up with, of course, people are going to be like, oh, okay, bud. But again, circling back, it didn't have to be everything that he released.
I don't think you have to give up all these documents about all these military and intelligence programs that aren't related to the metadata collection. When it's like these reporters can, check your background and see that you worked, for the CIA, and see that you worked as a Dell contractor for the NSA. They can find that out. There are other ways he could have given, or him needing to convince whoever it is, whether it's journalists or Russian or Chinese officials, that he is who he says he is, does in no way justify him giving them top secret information. The only justification for him releasing any top secret information was it was related to the illegal PRISM metadata collection program. That's the only thing that's remotely justified. Everything else is, there's no justification for its release under any kind of whistleblower, concept.
Okay.
That if he's a whistleblower, right? If he did the right thing, he did the right thing in regards to, because it was bringing attention to the PRISM program, this illegal program that was going on that people didn't know about, right? He brought attention to that. So all the documents related to PRISM, right, and its activities, that's fair game. Okay, fair enough. But everything else that's not related to that program at all, there's no justification, no rational justification, no moral or legal justification for releasing those, stealing them, taking them in the first place.
And now, like, here, like a direct quote from Snowden from his interview with Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It was the June 19th article, the whistleblower behind the NSA surveillance revelations, published in The Guardian. This quote says, "I carefully evaluated every single document I disclosed to ensure that each was legitimately in the public interest. There are all sorts of documents that would have made a big impact that I didn't turn over." So a direct quote from him in his initial, and like, as far as I know, just like the initial interview, like in June of 2013, he says he read everything that he turned over and none of it wasn't specifically in the public interest of what he was talking about. Now, that's another contradiction from the government, saying that it was, millions of documents pertaining to, reaction, and evidently that stuff really was there because of the backlash that we got from our allies from from spying on them and whatnot. So, I mean, like,
well,
his story sounds fishy. The government is always going to be, like, at least, taken with a grain of salt just for being the government. It's a tough call. He should definitely be able to come back and face a fair trial. He doesn't think he can, therefore he is not coming back.
Yeah.
And I mean, I honestly can say I can't blame him for not wanting to come back. I'm not sure that, like, if I were in his position, I would be doing anything differently than he is right now. I mean,
well, it's like he chose immediate safety, right? And that's why he fled, because for whatever reason, if he thought that he would be killed or imprisoned or whatever, and wouldn't be able to provide a public interest defense, so he fled for that reason. But a lot of other whistleblowers who've done this and revealed wrongdoing, they haven't fled, right? They stood their ground, but he ran, and his running has ensured essentially that he's not going to have his day in court. The fact that he ran.
Well, yeah, but I mean, had he not run, I mean, like, the deed was already done. He was still going to get charged under the Espionage Act,
Right.
He still knew that. And so, I mean, like, so yes, on paper, I'm guilty. And so now he's, and so, I mean, so now he's going to fight his case for the next 20 years in prison,
Right. But I mean, that's kind of like that's when you engage in civil disobedience, right? As like a protester or something, you accept that, you might get arrested for protesting, and that you're going to get a police record for doing that. If you're a whistleblower, you accept that, you're going to go through some things. Yeah. And I'm not saying that, it's okay. You expect to go to jail and be okay with that. I'm not saying that. But that running makes you look guilty. Running to an authoritarian country for aid and shelter
makes you look guilty as hell. Yeah.
And telling us to take your word for it that you destroyed all of those other documents that you stole before you ever left Hong Kong. Trust him. He would never give that information away. He wouldn't do that. That's, I'd really like to hear it out in court. I'd love, and obviously there's a lot we wouldn't be privy to, but it would be great. But that's not going to happen unless they amend the Espionage Act, which I hope they do. Doesn't seem like anybody's in a big hurry to do it, but it seems like yeah, that should be. I mean, it's definitely an old law that needs to be updated anyway, right? But I think also from maybe the government's perspective, is like we're not gonna amend a law just to make Edward Snowden happy, right? We're not gonna change the law so that he's gonna come back to stand trial. He can stay there in Russia and rot. They're not gonna do something to accommodate him, right? Yeah.
And why
But I
would
think
they?
if he was willing to stay and have it out, like Ellsberg was, and like others have, I mean, Chelsea Manning went to prison,
Yeah.
but she's out now. She's not in prison now. What's her name? Reality Winner. She went to prison for 5 years, but she's out.
Yeah.
So there's that choice of, all right. So if he's convicted, he spends however long in jail. But
yeah, no, I think you're right there.
Than
Yeah,
what he has now. I mean, he has his wife, he has his children. He's
and
in
they're
Russia.
all in Russia.
They're all in Russia. None of them are free.
Well, right, and that's the thing
you're-
is that, like, I mean, yeah, he took the quick win, which at this point, I mean, like,
He was 29. He was scared.
well, sure, but I mean, like, prison for 10, 20 years, or Russia for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and who knows? I mean, all right. So here's the thing: so many people have forgotten about Snowden already, and there's sufficient minutia in this whole story, ad nauseum, right? Because you're dealing with arcane intelligence, secret government stuff that gets very confusing very quickly, and conflicting accounts between Snowden and the government over and over and over again. That it's hard to follow if you don't really stay on top of it. So a lot of people have forgotten about it. I don't. Yeah, he did blow the whistle on something big, and they did. They did change the law, right? They did change the FISA law so that that to keep from that kind of data collection happening again. And I think also companies and other governments across the world are paying more attention to, like, encryption, that communications are better encrypted, or that they're just better data security in general. People are paying more attention to it now because of that, because of some of his revelations. But beyond that, I don't know. I think a lot of people have forgotten about the story. But if he came back and went to trial, right, that would bring it back to the public eye. If he went on trial, or let's say he had stayed, and never ran and went to trial, I mean, think of all the publicity of that issue, in the press that would create, as far as a public discussion about, our rights. And so, even if he is, this is my thinking as far as, like, if you're a whistleblower, that even if you are convicted for revealing information that it was illegal to do so, and they determine and you don't get that public interest defense, you're guilty, you're going for however long, that one, I mean, if you're a person of conscience doing this because of moral reasons, then you have to sort of assume that risk. There's no heroism in, doing something that's easy, that has no cost. It's almost like he wanted to do this courageous thing, but he wasn't quite willing
to
face the consequences of it. So he put himself in a situation that compromised him with our enemies. Right. So now we don't know, or I don't know, what the government claims he's met with Russian intelligence a lot, and that what he divulged has harmed national security, and our allies have said that he harmed their security as well. He did that. That happened because he wasn't willing to face the music and take a stand, right? I mean, it's like the people in the anti-war movement, or people in the Black Lives Matter movement, or people in the the workers, the workers movement, or the civil rights movement. These people accepted, we might go to jail, we might get the crap kicked out of us, but we have to do this. This is a moral imperative that we do this. What was it? Shoot, I'm trying to remember his name now. I'm spacing out. But he was a socialist presidential candidate during World War I. He spoke out against the war, and he went to prison because of that.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Under the Espionage Act.
I can't remember his name, but I think I know who you're talking about.
On the tip of my tongue. Yeah, he was a presidential candidate, and he spent, I don't know how many years it was in prison because of that. Normally the Espionage Act is used. Who is it?
Debs. Eugene
Debs. Eugene Debs. Yep, there it is. Eugene V. Debs. Yep. He was a pacifist. And he was the socialist candidate for president against Wilson.
Yeah. Who, if you like historical fiction, and have you ever heard of the author Harry Turtledove?
No.
Turtledove wrote a series of books that were like alternate histories. Had the South won the Civil War, going through I think about up to the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
But part of it was during World War I, when the U.S. allied, like the Confederates, like part of the alternate history is that the Confederates were recognized by the governments of France and England, and so when we get to World War I, the CSA is actually allied with England and France, and the U.S. is allied with the Central Powers like Germany, Austro-Hungary, and all that, and so there was World War I trench warfare on the on U.S. soil, and part of that was that Woodrow Wilson was the president of the Confederacy. Sorry, well, it's just that was a meaningless little tangent. But yeah, anybody out there, if you want a good interesting laugh, check out Harry Turtledove. And his alternate history books about when the South wins the Civil War. Anyway, I'm sorry, James, continue.
No, that was a great tangent. What were we talking about?
We got off on a little tangent about Debs, and then I took it to the next level. So,
yeah, but it's like as if you're a whistleblower or protester, if you're taking on some kind of a cause, like you do a certain.
You accept that there are going to be consequences, and there are risks and consequences associated with what you're doing, and the people that get remembered, by history as having been courageous about it are the ones that like take their lashings and are vindicated at some point when the rest of society comes around to, oh wow, maybe this person wasn't so wrong.
Yeah, I mean it's possible, like years from now, more information will come to light, and I could see it going either way. That, oh wow, Snowden was vindicated in doing this. Again, I have a harder time believing that because of the amount of documents that he stole.
Either that, or we're all going to find out that it was him. It was him along with Hillary that did Benghazi or whatever.
Right. Right. Or I mean, I think. My suspicion is, like, down the road, who knows, 20, 30 years from now, we'll find out that he was in bed with the Russians from the start. I don't necessarily think that, but it's a possibility that he could have been recruited while he was at CIA, or maybe even before, that he was like a disgruntled employee, with a big ego that felt he should be moving up faster.
Well, like the first part of his, military and intelligence career was washing out of special forces for medical reasons, and so by then, like.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of like a lot of like endless speculation everyone can engage in about who could.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's all sorts of, this could have happened. Yeah.
Maybe Snowden did. Yeah, the best way to get to the bottom of it would be in court, but
that isn't going to happen. Yeah.
I'd love for it to happen, though. I think that would be great. It'd be great for him to come back and stand trial. I wish, certainly now that he has a wife and kids, he's not going to do that. And, he Putin may not even let him go if he wanted to go. Right. That's completely whoever's running the Russian government. That's going to be up to them. Their sort of cost benefit at that time. Does it serve my interest to let him go or not? Yeah. I mean, I think we've covered it pretty extensively here. Looks like Edward Snowden's going to be hanging out in Russia for a while. That seems pretty certain.
That's the most obvious thing about this, or at least the most verifiable thing right now is, I don't picture him coming back anytime soon, regardless of whether or not we'd like him to, for whatever reason.
Yes, high confidence he will be residing in Russia for quite some time. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe they'll change maybe if they change that espionage law, maybe then things will change. But who knows? We'll just have to see about that one. Probably shouldn't hold our breaths on that happening, but that would be nice if they did. So anyway, I think that covers it for our show tonight. On Edward Snowden. Thanks everybody for joining us. Our next show is a very different, unusual, and interesting topic. Jordan, what is our next topic going to be about?
The state of Jefferson, which is near and dear to my heart. I used to drive back and forth between the Pacific Northwest and the Bay Area a lot, and it is a region of Northern California and Southern Oregon mostly that feels the residents of these areas feel politically and economically abandoned by their respective state governments, and have had a voice in their communities for many years to secede from their respective states and form their own state that they call Jefferson. There is a lot of political infighting there, the way things have sort of shaped the public sentiment of that area, and kind of like their feeling of being Californians or Oregonians versus being Jeffersonians, and it's not as big a movement as it was at its height, as many movements experience. But it is, if it's something you haven't heard of or something you've heard a little bit about, it's kind of an interesting little quirk to local politics here to the Pacific Northwest and kind of like West Coast in general. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, you mentioned that to me. It sounds like a fascinating topic that I'd never heard of. So I look forward to finding out more about it. So anyway, that's it for this episode of The Breakdown. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We're glad to be back, and we look forward to you joining us again here in the near future. Thanks again, and take care. Bye.